Good evening. Welcome to our fourth volume, The Forgotten Realms. It consists of stories 16 through 20 in our Middle-earth-inspired series. Let's begin. The forest's edge came suddenly, the dense canopy breaking apart to reveal an endless horizon of golden plains and jagged cliffs that stretched as far as the eye could see. The companions stood at the threshold, their steps hesitant as they left behind the comforting hum of the forest and stepped into the open expanse of the Forgotten Realms. The air here was drier, sharper, carrying the faint scent of earth and wildflowers, and the sky above was a vast, pale blue streaked with thin clouds that drifted lazily in the breeze. Orlen shielded his eyes against the sun, its light brighter and harsher than the soft glow of the forest, and felt the weight of the journey settle more heavily on his shoulders. Cyrana stood at his side, the keeper's staff faintly glowing in her hand, its light steady but subdued as though it too was adjusting to the new terrain. Adric knelt at the edge of the path, his fingers brushing against the dry, cracked earth as he muttered to himself, his staff resting against his shoulder. Calen lingered at the rear, his expression wary as his gaze swept over the open plains, his unease evident in the way his hand lingered near the hilt of his sword. The path ahead was faint, little more than a series of worn tracks that twisted and turned unpredictably through the golden grass that swayed in the breeze. The ruins of an ancient settlement lay scattered across the landscape, their stone walls crumbling and weathered by time, their presence a quiet reminder of the civilizations that had once thrived in this untamed land. Orlen felt the seed's absence acutely, the pocket where it had rested now empty, its pulse no longer a comforting guide. He glanced at Cyrana, her expression unreadable as she studied the horizon, and felt a flicker of unease at the thought of navigating this new and unfamiliar world. The forest felt alive, he said quietly, his voice breaking the silence. But this feels empty. Cyrana glanced at him, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening. It's not empty, she said firmly. It's just waiting. As they moved forward, the ruins grew larger, their jagged silhouettes rising against the sky like broken teeth. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint hum that Orlen could feel more than hear, a subtle vibration that seemed to echo through the ground beneath their feet. Adric paused, his staff glowing faintly as he knelt beside a fragment of stone etched with intricate carvings that had faded with time. These ruins are ancient, he said thoughtfully, his voice filled with quiet awe. Older than the forest, older than the keepers, whatever built this place, it was here long before us. Orlen knelt beside him, his fingers tracing the worn carvings as a wave of unease washed over him. The patterns were intricate and strange, their meaning lost to time, but they carried a faint sense of familiarity that he couldn't quite place. The hum grew louder as they approached the center of the ruins, the air growing cooler despite the warmth of the sun overhead. Orlen felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end as a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, quick and fleeting, gone, before he could focus on it. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice tense. Cyrana stopped, her gaze scanning the ruins, her grip on the keeper's staff firm. "We're not alone," she said quietly, her tone steady but sharp. Calen drew his sword, its blade catching the light as he turned toward the shadows, his movements deliberate and cautious. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low. Adric stood, his staff humming softly as he stepped back toward the group. "Something old," he said thoughtfully. "Something watching us." The shadow flickered again, darting between the crumbling walls with a speed and fluidity that made it difficult to track. Orlen's pulse quickened as he caught a brief glimpse of the figure, a lithe, sinewy form that moved with an unnatural grace, its eyes glinting like polished obsidian in the sunlight. It paused at the edge of the ruins, its head tilting slightly as though studying them, and Orlen felt a chill run through him as its gaze met his. "It's fast," Calen muttered, his grip on his sword tightening. "Too fast." Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light flaring brightly as she stepped forward, her expression hard. "It's not attacking," she said firmly. "It's curious." The figure moved again, circling the group at a distance, its movements quick and deliberate, its presence elusive but unmistakable. Orlen felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination as he watched it. The glint of its eyes and the fluidity of its movements unlike anything he had seen before. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her gaze fixed on the figure. "We wait," she said firmly. "If it wanted to harm us, it would have done so already." The figure paused again, its form half hidden behind a crumbling wall, and for a moment the air grew still, the hum of the ruins fading into silence. Orlen held his breath as the figure stepped into the open, its lithe, feline form fully visible now, its sleek, fur-covered body glinting faintly in the sunlight. Its eyes, dark and piercing, were fixed on the group, its presence both alien and strangely familiar. It tilted its head again, its movements deliberate and unthreatening, and Orlen felt a wave of calm wash over him as it stepped closer, its gaze unbroken. "It's not an enemy," Adric said softly, his voice filled with quiet awe. "It's something else." The creature moved closer, its steps slow and deliberate, its sleek body gliding over the uneven ground with an elegance that made it seem weightless. Its fur shimmered faintly in the sunlight, a blend of deep grey and silver that seemed to shift like the surface of water. Orlen felt his breath catch as its dark, piercing eyes locked onto his, their gaze unblinking and unnervingly intelligent. Cyrana held her ground, the keeper's staff steady in her grip, its faint glow casting long shadows across the ruins. "It's testing me," she said quietly, her voice calm but firm, "seeing if we're a threat." Calen shifted uneasily, his sword raised but his stance hesitant, his gaze darting between the creature and the crumbling walls around them. "If it thinks we're a threat, we won't stand a chance," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The air around them grew still, the faint hum of the ruins quieting to an almost imperceptible vibration that seemed to pulse in time with the creature's movements. Adric stepped forward slowly, his staff glowing faintly as he lowered it toward the ground, his posture deliberate and non-threatening. "It's not attacking," he said softly, his tone filled with quiet wonder. "It's watching, waiting." Orlen felt the weight of the creature's gaze shift to him, its eyes narrowing slightly as though it could see into his thoughts, and he swallowed hard, the dry air catching in his throat. The creature tilted its head slightly, its movements fluid and precise, and then it stopped, its sleek form motionless except for the faint ripple of its fur in the breeze. Orlen took a tentative step forward, his hands at his sides, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature's gaze followed his every movement, its eyes unblinking, its presence both unnerving and strangely calming. "We mean no harm," Orlen said softly, his voice trembling slightly but steady. "We're just passing through." The creature's ears twitched, its head tilting the other way, and for a moment, The air seemed to vibrate with a faint, melodic hum that Orlen felt more than heard. Cyrana shifted slightly, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening as the glow of its crystal flared briefly. "It's listening," she said quietly, her voice filled with cautious curiosity. The creature stepped closer, its movements slow and deliberate, its sleek body weaving gracefully between the crumbling walls of the ruins. Orlen felt a strange calm wash over him as it approached, its dark eyes searching his face as though trying to understand him. "It's not like anything I've ever seen," Adric murmured, his voice filled with awe. "It doesn't feel natural. It's something more." The hum of the ruins grew louder, a low, resonant tone that seemed to pulse through the air, and the creature paused, its ears flicking back as though hearing something the companions couldn't. It raised its head slightly, its gaze shifting to the horizon, and let out a low, melodic sound that echoed through the ruins like the toll of a distant bell. The ground beneath their feet trembled faintly, and Orlen felt a chill run through him as the light of the glowing stones flickered and dimmed. "Something's coming," Cyrana said sharply, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening. The creature turned its gaze back to her, its expression unreadable, and then it stepped back, its movements swift and fluid as it melted into the shadows of the ruins. The air grew colder, the hum of the ruins deepening into a low, ominous tone that seemed to resonate through the ground. The shadows at the edges of the glade began to shift, coalescing into dark, writhing shapes that crept closer with each passing moment. Orlen felt his pulse quicken as the light of the glowing stones faded completely, plunging the ruins into an eerie twilight. "We need to move," Cyrana said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Adric nodded, his staff glowing brightly as he raised it, its runes shimmering like starlight. "The ruins are reacting to something," he said thoughtfully. "Something old, something dangerous." The companions moved together, their steps cautious but deliberate as they followed the faint path through the ruins. The creature's presence lingered at the edges of their awareness, its dark eyes watching from the shadows, its movements swift and elusive. Orlen felt its gaze on him, a quiet reassurance that was both comforting and unsettling, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it was guiding them, leading them towards something important. The hum of the ruins grew louder as they reached the center of the settlement, its low, resonant tone vibrating through the ground with an intensity that made Orlen's chest tighten. At the heart of the ruins stood a massive stone archway, its surface etched with intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the dim light. The air around it was thick with magic, a palpable presence that made the hair on the back of Orlen's neck stand on end. The creature emerged from the shadows, its sleek form gliding silently toward the archway, its movements deliberate and purposeful. It paused at the base of the arch, its gaze fixed on the companions, and let out another low, melodic sound that echoed through the ruins. The carvings on the archway flared brightly, their light flooding the glade with an intensity that made Orlen shield his eyes. When the light faded, the creature was gone, its presence replaced by a quiet, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the archway itself. Cyrana stepped forward cautiously, her grip on the keeper's staff firm as she studied the glowing carvings. "It's a gateway," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "But to where?" Adric knelt beside the base of the archway, his staff glowing faintly as he traced the carvings with his fingers. "The creature led us here," he said thoughtfully. "It wanted us to find this." Orlen felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him as he stepped closer to the archway, its light reflecting in his eyes. "Then we'd better figure out why," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet determination. The air around the archway seemed to pulse with energy, a low, rhythmic hum that vibrated through the ground and resonated in the companions' chests. The intricate carvings along its surface glowed faintly, their patterns shifting and flowing like liquid light, casting an eerie glow across the surrounding ruins. Orlen stepped closer, his breath catching as the carvings pulsed brighter in response to his presence, their light rippling outward like ripples on water. Cyrana stood at his side, the keeper's staff glowing steadily in her hand, its crystal reflecting the archway's ethereal glow. "This isn't just a relic," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "It's alive, an artifact of something far older than the forest or the keepers." Adric knelt beside the base of the archway, his staff humming softly as he studied the carvings with a mixture of fascination and caution. "The magic here feels different," he said thoughtfully. "It's raw, untamed, like the land itself." Calen lingered at the edge of the glade, his gaze darting nervously between the shifting shadows that moved at the periphery of the ruins. "We're exposed here," he muttered, his grip on his sword tightening. "Whatever brought us here, it's not done with us yet." The air grew colder, the hum of the archway deepening into a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of the ruins. Orlen felt the weight of the creature's absence, its lithe form no longer visible in the shadows, but its presence still lingered, a faint, elusive energy that seemed to guide his thoughts. "The creature wanted us to find this," he said, softly, his voice trembling slightly. "But why?" The carvings on the archway flared brightly, their light flooding the glade with an intensity that made Orlen shield his eyes. The hum deepened, rising into a melodic resonance that seemed to echo from somewhere deep within the earth, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as the air grew thick with magic. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light merging with the glow of the archway as she stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "It's not just a gateway," she said firmly. "It's a key, something that connects this world to another." Adric's gaze sharpened, his staff glowing brightly as he stood, his expression thoughtful. "Then we need to figure out how it works," he said, "before something else does." The shadows at the edge of the glade began to stir, their movements slow and deliberate as they coalesced into dark, writhing shapes that crept closer with each passing moment. Calen's sword flashed in the faint light as he stepped forward, his stance tense but steady. "We don't have much time," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the tension. Orlen felt his pulse quicken as the carvings on the archway shifted again, their patterns resolving into a single, glowing symbol, a spiral that pulsed faintly with a light that seemed both ancient and alive. "It's asking us for something," he said, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "A memory, a truth, something it needs to open." The shadows surged suddenly, their forms stretching toward the archway like dark tendrils of smoke. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its crystal flaring brightly as she drove them back, her expression hard. "Whatever it wants, we need to give it now," she said firmly. Orlen stepped closer to the archway, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch the glowing symbol. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a wave of warmth surged through him, and the world around him dissolved into a swirling haze of light and shadow. He saw the forgotten realms as they had once been, vast, thriving lands filled with towering cities and vibrant life. He saw the beings who had built them, their forms graceful and radiant, their voices resonating like music as they worked together to shape the world. and he saw the shadows that had come for them, relentless and consuming, their darkness spreading across the land like a plague. The vision shifted, and Orlen felt the weight of the artifact's purpose settle heavily on his shoulders. The archway was a bridge, a connection to the past and the future, a key to understanding the light and shadow that now shaped their journey. When the vision faded, Orlen was back in the glade, the hum of the archway steady and calm, its light glowing faintly in the dim twilight. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her gaze sharp but questioning as she studied him. "What did you see?" she asked. Orlen hesitated, his thoughts still swirling with the images and emotions of the vision. "It's not just a gateway," he said softly, his voice steady but filled with quiet awe. "It's a choice, a path forward, but only if we're willing to take the risk." The shadows at the edge of the glade faded into the ground, their presence retreating as the light of the archway steadied. The path ahead shimmered faintly, the glowing stones marking the way forward with a quiet, guiding light. Adric stepped forward, his staff humming faintly as he studied the archway with a mixture of caution and wonder. "Then we take the risk," he said firmly. "The answers we need are ahead, not behind." Orlen nodded, his hand brushing against the spiral symbol one last time as the companions stepped onto the path, their resolve unspoken but clear. Together they left the glade, the light of the archway fading behind them as the vast expanse of the Forgotten Realms stretched out before them, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. The ruins stretched endlessly before the companions, a labyrinth of broken walls and crumbled towers cloaked in an eerie stillness. The air was dense with an unfamiliar energy, a faint hum that seemed to resonate from the very stones beneath their feet. Orlen felt a strange unease as he stepped cautiously over the uneven ground, his boots scuffing against ancient carvings worn smooth by time. The ruins were unlike anything they had encountered before. Vast and foreboding, their jagged silhouettes rising against a pale, clouded sky. Cyrana led the way, the keeper's staff glowing faintly in her hand, its light casting long, flickering shadows that danced across the cracked surfaces of the walls. Adric followed closely, his staff humming softly, its runes glinting like faint stars as they responded to the latent magic in the air. Calen lingered at the rear, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, his sharp eyes scanning the shifting shadows that seemed to move at the edge of their vision. The path through the ruins twisted and turned unpredictably, leading them deeper into the heart of the ancient settlement. The ground was littered with fragments of stone and twisted metal, their strange designs hinting at a civilization long lost to time. Orlen knelt beside a shard of what appeared to be a broken mosaic, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly under the dim light. "Whoever built this place, they weren't ordinary craftsmen," he murmured, his voice breaking the silence. Adric crouched beside him, his expression thoughtful as he traced the designs with his fingers. "These aren't just decorations," he said quietly. "They're symbols, runes of power tied to the magic of this land, this place. It was alive once." As they moved deeper into the ruins, the faint hum grew louder, resonating through the air with a low, melodic tone that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Cyrana stopped suddenly, her gaze fixed on the ground ahead, where a narrow opening gaped like a wound in the earth. The edges of the fissure were jagged and uneven, and the faint glow of runes could be seen along its walls, their light pulsing in time with the hum. "A passage," she said quietly, her voice tinged with awe. "It goes beneath the ruins." Orlen felt his pulse quicken as he peered into the darkness. the faint light of the runes casting strange, shifting patterns on the stone walls. "This must be what we were meant to find," he said softly, his voice steady despite the unease that churned in his chest. Calen stepped forward, his sword drawn, the blade glinting faintly in the dim light. "If we're going down there, we'd better be ready for anything," he muttered, his tone low but firm. Adric nodded, his staff glowing brighter as he stepped toward the edge of the fissure. "The magic here is strong," he said thoughtfully, "but it's old, fragile. Whatever lies beneath, it's been waiting for a long time." Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light flaring brightly as she descended into the passage, her steps deliberate and cautious. Orlen followed closely, his heart pounding as the walls of the fissure closed in around them, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step. The passage sloped steeply downward, its walls carved with the same intricate patterns that adorned the ruins above. The runes glowed faintly, their light steady but muted, as though struggling to hold back the encroaching darkness. Orlen felt a strange sense of familiarity as he traced the carvings with his fingers, their smooth surfaces pulsing faintly under his touch. "This place, it feels alive," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the hum. Cyrana glanced back at him, her expression calm but questioning. "The magic of this land is unlike anything we've seen," she said. "It's not just alive, it's watching us." As they reached the bottom of the passage, the walls opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor covered in a mosaic of glowing stones that formed a complex, shifting pattern. At the center of the chamber stood a massive pillar of smooth black stone, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with a steady golden light. The air was thick with magic, a tangible presence that made Orlen's chest tighten and his pulse quicken. Adric stepped forward, his staff glowing brightly as he approached the pillar, his expression filled with awe. "This is the heart of the ruins," he said, softly, "the source of its magic." Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light merging with the glow of the runes on the pillar, casting the chamber in a warm, golden light. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, her voice filled with wonder. Orlen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble slightly, the hum of the chamber deepening into a low, resonant tone that vibrated through his very bones. "It's also dangerous," Calen muttered, his gaze fixed on the shadows that lingered at the edges of the light. "We need to be careful." As the companions stood before the pillar, the runes flared brightly, their light flooding the chamber with an intensity that made Orlen shield his eyes. The hum rose into a melodic crescendo, and the air around them seemed to ripple as the shadows at the edges of the chamber began to move. Orlen felt his breath catch as a figure emerged from the darkness, its form lithe and otherworldly, its movements slow and deliberate. It stood silently before them, its presence both alien and familiar. And Orlen felt a wave of unease wash over him as its dark, piercing eyes locked onto his. "Something else is here," he said, softly, his voice trembling slightly. The figure tilted its head slightly, its gaze unbroken, and the hum of the chamber deepened into a low, resonant tone that echoed through the silence. The figure stood motionless, its piercing eyes glinting faintly in the golden light of the pillar, its presence commanding yet strangely subdued. The companions remained frozen, their gazes locked on the being that had emerged from the shadows, its lithe form exuding an aura of both elegance and danger. Cyrana tightened her grip on the keeper's staff, its glow brightening as though responding to her resolve. "What are you?" she asked. her voice calm but firm, carrying through the chamber's resonant hum. The figure tilted its head slightly, its movements slow and deliberate, and then it stepped forward, its bare feet silent against the glowing mosaic floor. Orlen's chest tightened as it drew closer, its form becoming clearer in the warm golden light. Its features were striking and angular, its skin a pale, silvery hue that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim glow. Long, sleek hair, the color of obsidian, cascaded down its back, and its dark eyes, reflective like polished stone, never wavered from their steady focus on the companions. The hum of the chamber deepened, the air growing heavier with magic as the figure came to a stop just a few paces from the group. Adric shifted slightly, his staff glowing faintly as he raised it, its runes shimmering like starlight. "It's not attacking," he said quietly, his tone filled with cautious curiosity. "It's observing." The figure's gaze shifted to Adric, its eyes narrowing slightly, and for a brief moment, the air vibrated with a faint, melodic resonance that seemed to emanate from the being itself. Orlen felt his pulse quicken as the sound filled the chamber, weaving into the hum of the ruins in a way that was both harmonious and unsettling. "It's communicating," Adric murmured, his expression thoughtful, "but not with words." Cyrana took a slow step forward, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "We mean no harm," she said clearly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We're travelers, seeking answers." The figure tilted its head again, its gaze shifting to Cyrana as the resonance grew louder, its tone deepening into a low, melodic hum that seemed to vibrate through the companion's very bones. Orlen felt the weight of its presence settle heavily on his shoulders, its unspoken words brushing against his thoughts like the rustle of distant leaves. Images flickered in his mind, fragments of a vast, thriving city filled with radiant beings like the one before them, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus that echoed through the air. The vision shifted, darkening, as the shadows began to creep across the city, consuming its light and leaving only ruins in their wake. Orlen staggered slightly, his hand brushing against the pillar for support as the vision faded, replaced by the dim glow of the chamber and the steady hum of the ruins. "It knows," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly, "and it knows what happened here. What's happening now?" Cyrana glanced at him sharply, her expression questioning. "What did you see?" she asked. Orlen hesitated, his thoughts still reeling from the intensity of the vision. "A city," he said finally, his voice unsteady. "A city like this, filled with beings like it. They were connected, part of something larger. But the shadows came, and everything fell apart." The figure's gaze shifted back to the pillar, its eyes dark and unreadable, and it raised one slender hand, its fingers brushing against the glowing runes that pulsed faintly beneath its touch. The hum of the chamber deepened further, the light of the pillar flaring brightly as the resonance rose into a melodic crescendo. Adric stepped closer, his staff glowing brighter as he studied the figure's movements, his expression filled with awe. "It's tied to this place," he said quietly, "well, part of the magic that built it, or what's left of it." Calen shifted uneasily, his hand on the hilt of his sword as he glanced at the shifting shadows that lingered at the edges of the light. "That doesn't mean we can trust it," he muttered, his voice low but tense. The figure turned its gaze to Calen, its dark eyes narrowing slightly, and for a moment the air vibrated with a faint, sharp resonance that sent a chill through the companions. Cyrana stepped forward quickly, raising the keeper's staff as its light flared brightly. "We're not your enemies," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. The figure tilted its head again, its gaze softening slightly as the resonance shifted back to its melodic tone, blending seamlessly with the hum of the ruins. Orlen felt a wave of calm wash over him as the figure stepped back, its movements slow and deliberate, and the glow of the pillar dimmed slightly, its light steady but subdued. "It's guiding us," Adric said softly, his voice filled with quiet conviction, "showing us the way forward." The figure turned, its sleek form gliding silently toward the far end of the chamber, where another passageway yawned like a mouth into the darkness. The companions exchanged uncertain glances before following, their steps cautious but deliberate as they moved deeper into the ruins. The passage sloped downward sharply, its walls etched with the same glowing runes that pulsed faintly in time with the hum of the ruins. The air grew cooler and heavier, the faint scent of damp earth mingling with the metallic tang of ancient magic. The figure moved ahead of them, its presence a quiet reassurance despite the unease that lingered at the edges of Orlen's thoughts. The passage opened suddenly into a smaller chamber, its walls lined with massive stone tablets covered in intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the dim light. The figure stopped at the center of the chamber, its gaze fixed on a single tablet that pulsed with a steady golden light. Orlen felt his breath catch as the figure raised its hand, its fingers brushing against the glowing surface of the tablet. The hum of the ruins deepened into a low, resonant tone that filled the chamber, and the air around them seemed to ripple with energy. "This is what it wanted us to see?" Cyrana said softly, her voice filled with quiet awe. Adric stepped closer, his staff glowing brightly as he studied the tablet, his expression thoughtful. "This isn't just history," he said. "It's a warning." Orlen felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his chest as the glow of the tablet brightened, its light casting long, shifting shadows across the chamber. The air in the chamber grew heavier as the glowing tablet pulsed brighter, casting the companions in its shifting golden light. The runes etched across its surface seemed alive, blowing and twisting into new patterns that Orlen couldn't decipher, their brilliance reflecting in his wide eyes. The figure stood motionless beside the tablet, its hand still pressed against its smooth surface, its sleek form bathed in the shimmering glow. Orlen felt a strange pull toward the light. An inexplicable sense of familiarity mingled with unease, as if the tablet's magic resonated with something deep within him. Cyrana stepped forward, the keeper's staff glowing faintly in her grip as she studied the figure's movements, her expression cautious yet curious. "It's revealing something to us," she murmured, her voice cutting through the resonant hum that filled the chamber. Adric knelt beside another of the massive tablets, his staff resting against his shoulder as he traced the faint carvings with his fingers, his brow furrowed in thought. "These aren't just records," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "They're instructions. A guide to something far older than these ruins." Calen lingered at the edge of the light, his sword half drawn, his sharp eyes fixed on the shadows that danced along the walls, his unease evident in the tension of his stance. "Whatever this place is, it's drawing attention," he muttered, his voice low and wary. "We're not the only beings here." The figure turned suddenly, its dark, reflective eyes meeting Orlen's, and for a moment the chamber seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the ruins deepened, resonating through the stone walls like the toll of a distant bell, and Orlen felt a wave of energy ripple through the air, brushing against his thoughts like a whisper in a language he couldn't understand. He staggered slightly, the pressure in his chest tightening as flashes of images filled his mind. A vast network of glowing pathways winding through an endless landscape of ruins, the shadowy figures of beings moving silently among them, their forms distorted and fleeting. "It's showing us the truth," Orlen whispered, his voice trembling as he struggled to steady himself. "This place, these people, they weren't just builders or magicians. They were keepers of something vital." Cyrana raised the keeper's staff higher, its light merging with the glow of the tablet, and the runes flared brightly, their patterns resolving into a single, spiraling symbol that pulsed with a steady golden light. "This symbol," she said, her voice filled with quiet awe. "It's the same as the one on the archway. It's a connection." The figure stepped back, its sleek form gliding silently to the edge of the chamber, and Orlen felt the weight of its gaze linger on him before it turned toward a darkened passageway that yawned open at the far end of the room. The hum of the ruins softened slightly, the glow of the tablet dimming as the figure raised its hand, motioning for the companions to follow. Adric stood quickly, his staff humming faintly in his grip as he exchanged a glance with Cyrana. "It's leading us deeper," he said thoughtfully, his voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. "But why?" Cyrana nodded, her expression resolute as she moved toward the passageway, her steps deliberate and unhurried. "There's only one way to find out," she said firmly. Orlen hesitated, his hand brushing against the faint carvings on the tablet, the lingering warmth of its magic spreading through him like a quiet reassurance. He took a deep breath and followed, his heart pounding as the shadows of the passageway closed in around them. The passage twisted and turned, its narrow walls etched with faint runes that pulsed softly in the dim light, their patterns growing more complex with every step. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint metallic tang that prickled at Orlen's senses, and the hum of the ruins became a low, steady vibration that resonated through his bones. The figure moved ahead of them, its presence both comforting and unsettling, its movements silent and fluid as it led them deeper into the unknown. The passage opened suddenly into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor covered in a mosaic of glowing stones that formed a massive, intricate symbol that pulsed faintly in time with the hum. At the center of the cavern stood a massive structure, a towering spire of smooth, dark stone that rose high into the darkness above, its surface etched with the same spiraling symbol that had appeared on the tablet. The figure paused at the base of the spire, its gaze fixed on the glowing runes that lined its surface. And Orlen felt a wave of quiet reverence wash over him as he stepped closer. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light casting long shadows across the cavern walls, and the hum deepened into a low, melodic tone that seemed to fill the air with a quiet, resonant power. "This is it," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "The heart of the ruins. The heart of their magic." Adric approached the spire cautiously, his staff glowing brightly as he studied the intricate carvings that covered its surface, his expression thoughtful. "This isn't just a relic," he said quietly. "It's a beacon, something that connects this place to the greater world." Calen shifted uneasily, his gaze darting to the shadows that lingered at the edges of the light, his grip on his sword tightening. "If it's a beacon, then someone, or something, will come looking for it," he muttered, his voice low but steady. The figure turned to face the companions, its dark eyes glinting faintly in the dim light, and for a moment The cavern was silent, the hum of the ruins fading into a quiet, resonant stillness. It raised its hand, its fingers brushing against the glowing surface of the spire, and the carvings flared brightly, their light flooding the cavern with an intensity that made Orlen shield his eyes. When the light dimmed, the figure stepped back, its gaze fixed on Orlen as the spiraling symbol on the spire began to pulse steadily, its rhythm matching the faint hum of the ruins. Orlen felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his chest as the figure's presence filled the cavern, its unspoken message clear. "It's asking us to protect it," he said softly, his voice trembling with the weight of the realization. "To protect what's left of its light." The wind swept through the barren expanse, carrying with it a faint, mournful wail that seemed to echo from the jagged peaks that rose in the distance. The companions stood at the edge of a desolate plain, its cracked, ashen ground littered with fragments of dark stone that shimmered faintly in the pale light. The fractured spire loomed ahead, a towering relic of a forgotten age, its surface marred with deep fissures that glowed faintly with an inner light. Orlen felt a strange pull as he gazed at the spire, its presence both commanding and unsettling, as though it was watching them, waiting for their approach. Cyrana led the way, the keeper's staff glowing steadily in her hand, its light muted but resolute as it cast long, shifting shadows across the ground. Adric followed close behind, his staff humming faintly in his grip, its runes flickering in response to the spire's distant glow. Calen brought up the rear, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, his gaze sharp as it scanned the horizon for any sign of movement. The air was colder here, heavy with the weight of the spire's presence, and the faint hum that had guided them through the ruins now resonated in a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. As they moved closer, the details of the spire became clearer, its surface carved with intricate patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid light, their shapes both beautiful and incomprehensible. Orlen felt a chill run through him as he traced the lines with his eyes, their design carrying a faint sense of familiarity that he couldn't quite place. "This isn't just a relic," Adric said softly, his voice tinged with awe. "It's a keystone, something vital to whatever was built here." Cyrana nodded, her expression hard as her gaze fixed on the spire's fractured peak, its jagged edges silhouetted against the dim skull, "And whatever broke it didn't want it repaired," she said, her tone steady but edged with unease. The hum deepened as they approached, the faint light within the spire flaring briefly before settling into a steady pulse, as though responding to their presence. Orlen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble slightly, the pulse aligning with his heartbeat, and he reached instinctively for the faint warmth of the keeper's relics in his pocket, their presence a quiet reassurance. The spire towered above them now, its scale overwhelming as they stood at its base, their reflections distorted in the shimmering surface of its carvings. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its crystal flaring brightly as she stepped closer, and the light of the spire surged in response, flooding the plain with a golden glow that sent long shadows racing across the ground. "It's still alive," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet wonder. Adric knelt beside the base of the spire, his staff resting against the ground as he ran his fingers over the glowing carvings, his brow furrowed in thought. "This magic, it's fractured, like the spire itself," he said. "It's trying to hold itself together, but it's failing." Calen shifted uneasily, his gaze darting toward the horizon where the faint shapes of distant figures flickered at the edge of the light. "We're not alone," he muttered, his voice low but tense. Whatever broke this spire might still be out there. The hum deepened further, the pulse of the spire growing stronger as its light flared brightly once more, casting the companions in a warm golden glow. Orlen felt his breath catch as the carvings shifted again, their shapes resolving into a single, spiraling symbol that pulsed faintly with a light that seemed both ancient and alive. "This symbol," he said, quietly, his voice trembling slightly. "It's the same as the one on the archway." Cyrana nodded, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening as she raised it higher, its light merging with the spire's glow. "It's all connected," she said firmly. "The ruins, the archway, this spire, they're part of something larger, something we don't fully understand yet." Adric stood slowly, his staff glowing faintly in his hand as he exchanged a glance with Cyrana. "Then we need to understand it," he said thoughtfully, "before the shadows do." The air around them grew colder, the hum of the spire deepening into a low, resonant tone that vibrated through the ground. Orlen felt a wave of unease wash over him as the shadows at the edge of the plain began to shift, coalescing into dark, writhing shapes that moved closer with each passing moment. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light flaring brightly as she stepped forward, her expression hard. "Whatever broke this spire might still be watching us," she said sharply, "and it's not going to let us leave without a fight." The companions braced themselves as the light of the spire flared brightly, its pulse aligning with the hum of the ruins and the steady rhythm of their hearts. As the shadows crept closer, their presence a stark reminder of the dangers that lay ahead. The spire's glow pulsed steadily, casting golden ripples across the barren plain as the companions tightened their circle near its base. The air vibrated with the hum of its fractured magic, a low and resonant tone that seemed to echo not just in their ears, but through their very bones. Orlen kept his gaze fixed on the spiraling symbol etched into the stone, its faint light tugging at the edges of his thoughts like a distant memory he couldn't quite reach. "It's speaking to us," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the hum. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff higher, its crystal flaring brightly as if to push back the shadows creeping along the horizon. "Then we need to listen," she replied firmly, her gaze scanning the intricate patterns that shifted across the spire's surface. Adric knelt beside the base of the relic, his staff resting against his shoulder as he traced the runes with his fingers, his expression one of quiet awe. "It's damaged, but it's alive," he murmured, the glow of his staff reflecting in his wide eyes. This wasn't just a monument, it was a source of power. Whatever broke it didn't just destroy the structure, they tried to sever the magic tied to this entire land. The hum deepened suddenly, resonating through the grund with enough force to make the companions stagger. The spiraling symbol on the spire's surface flared brighter, and Orlen felt the hair on the back of his neck rise as a wave of warmth washed over him. For a brief moment, the barren plain around them transformed, overlaid with a flickering vision of what the spire might have been, a towering structure of light and energy, surrounded by lush greenery and bustling with figures whose graceful forms shimmered like starlight. The vision was vivid and fleeting, dissolving into shadows as quickly as it had come, but its impression lingered, filling Orlen with a quiet sense of loss. "It wasn't just a beacon," he said softly, his voice trembling. "It was alive, part of something bigger, like the forest, but more." Adric nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the spire's glowing surface. "And whoever destroyed it, they knew exactly what they were doing," he said thoughtfully. "They broke the light to let the shadows in." The temperature dropped sharply as the hum faded into an eerie silence, broken only by the faint rustle of wind sweeping across the plain. Calen shifted uneasily, his grip tightening on his sword as he scanned the horizon, his sharp eyes catching movement among the distant shadows. "We've got company," he muttered, his voice low but steady. Cyrana turned sharply, her expression hardening as she raised the keeper's staff, its crystal flaring brightly. The shadows that had lingered at the edges of the plain began to coalesce, their forms shifting and writhing like living smoke as they moved closer. Orlen's pulse quickened as he felt the weight of their presence press down on him, their approach slow but deliberate, their dark, formless shapes exuding a quiet menace. "They're not just watching anymore," he said, his voice trembling. "They're coming for the spire." The light of the spire flared again, brighter this time, as if in a defiance of the encroaching darkness. The hum returned, louder and more insistent, and Orlen felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as the spiraling symbol on the spire's surface began to shift, its patterns resolving into a new configuration that pulsed with a golden light. Cyrana stepped forward, her grip firm on the keeper's staff, as she planted it firmly into the ground. "Whatever this spire is trying to do, we need to give it time," she said sharply. "We hold the line." Adric rose to his feet, his staff glowing brightly as he stepped beside her, the runes along its length flaring in response to the spire's magic. "The light is still here," he said firmly, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "We just have to protect it." The shadows surged forward, their movements frantic and chaotic, as though driven by an unseen force. Calen moved to intercept them, his sword flashing in the golden light as he struck at the nearest tendrils of darkness, his movements quick and precise. The shadows recoiled briefly, their forms dispersing like smoke before regrouping, their numbers growing with each passing moment. Orlen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble as he gripped the keeper's relics in his pocket, their faint warmth spreading through him like a quiet reassurance. He stepped closer to the spire, the glow of its spiraling symbol reflecting in his wide eyes. "It's responding to us," he said softly, his voice trembling. "It's drawing strength from our light." Cyrana nodded sharply, her gaze fixed on the advancing shadows as she raised the keeper's staff, its crystal flaring with an intensity that sent a wave of golden light rippling across the plain. The shadows faltered, their forms flickering as the light pushed them back, but they pressed on, their movements relentless. "Then we hold it," she said, firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Adric's staff hummed loudly as he stepped forward, its runes glowing brightly as he muttered a quiet incantation, the light of his magic merging with the glow of the spire. Calen struck again, his sword cutting through the nearest shadow, its dark form dissolving into the ground as the light of the spire flared brighter, its hum rising into a melodic crescendo that filled the air with a resonant power. Together the companions stood their ground, the light of their relics merging with the spire's glow as the shadows closed in, their presence a stark reminder of the darkness they were fighting to keep at bay. The shadows surged like a tide, their dark, writhing forms pressing closer with every passing moment, their movements frenetic and relentless as they sought to overwhelm the light of the spire. The hum of the fractured relic deepened, resonating through the ground and the companion's bones with an intensity that made the air vibrate. Orlen stood close to the spire, the warmth of its glow flooding through him as if bolstering his resolve, the spiraling symbol on its surface shifting and pulsing in time with the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff high, its crystal flaring brilliantly as she stepped forward, her presence commanding as a wave of golden light radiated outward, pushing the shadows back momentarily. "We're not here to fight them," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "We're here to protect this light." Adric knelt at the spire's base, his staff resting against his shoulder as he ran his fingers over the glowing runes that covered its surface, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's trying to repair itself," he murmured, his voice tinged with awe and urgency. "But it's drawing on us, on our relics. We need to stay close, or it won't be enough." The ground trembled violently as the shadows pressed forward again, their forms stretching and twisting as they struck against the light with an almost sentient determination. Calen moved swiftly to intercept them, his sword flashing in the spire's golden glow as he parried and struck, his movements precise and fluid. Yet for every shadow he dispersed, more seemed to rise from the ground, their dark shapes coalescing into something larger, more defined, a towering figure of pure darkness that loomed over the battlefield. Orlen's breath caught as he felt its gaze settle on him, its presence suffocating and oppressive, like a storm bearing down upon them. The spiraling symbol on the spire flared brightly, its light pulsing erratically as the hum deepened into a discordant tone that vibrated through the air. "It's fighting back," Adric said, his voice rising with urgency. "But it's unstable. If the spire collapses, everything it's holding together will be lost." Cyrana stepped forward, her staff glowing fiercely as she stood between the towering shadow and the spire, her expression resolute. "Then we hold it steady," she said firmly, her voice calm despite the chaos. She planted the keeper's swath into the ground, its light merging with the glow of the spire, and the golden radiance intensified, pushing back the shadow's advance. Orlen felt the relics in his pocket pulse faintly, their warmth spreading through him like a quiet reassurance, and he stepped closer to the spire, his hand brushing against its smooth, glowing surface. The moment his fingers touched the spiraling symbol, a wave of energy surged through him, and the vision returned, clearer, more vivid than before. He saw the spire as it once was, a beacon of light and power at the heart of a thriving civilization, its magic sustaining not just the land, but the very lives of those who lived within its reach. He saw the shadows arrive, relentless and consuming, tearing through the light with a purpose he couldn't fully understand, and he saw the spire fracture, its magic splintering and fading as the land was left to wither. The vision dissolved into the present, and Orlen felt the weight of its meaning settle heavily on his chest. "It's not just a relic," he said, softly, his voice trembling. "It's the key to this entire land, to its survival. If it falls, everything here will fade with it." Adric's gaze sharpened as he stood, his staff glowing brightly as he exchanged a glance with Cyrana. "Then we can't let it fall," he said, firmly, his voice filled with quiet conviction. Together the companions rallied around the spire, their relics glowing brightly as their combined light merged with the spiraling symbol, stabilizing its erratic pulses. The towering shadow let out a low, resonant roar, its form surging forward with renewed intensity, but the spire's glow flared brilliantly, casting the plain in a golden light so powerful it seemed to freeze the air. The shadows faltered, their forms flickering and dissolving like smoke as the light pressed them back, scattering them to the edges of the plain. The towering figure recoiled, its dark shape writhing as the spire's light intensified, and with one final blinding pulse, the shadow exploded into fragments that dissipated into the ground. The plain grew still, the hum of the spire softening into a low, steady vibration, its light steady and calm as the spiraling symbol resolved into a perfect, unbroken pattern. Orlen stepped back, his chest heaving as the weight of the moment settled on him, and he felt a quiet sense of triumph as the spire stood whole once more. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her expression calm but resolute as she turned to face the others. "The spire is whole," she said softly. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." The horizon shimmered faintly, the faint glow of distant ruins marking the path ahead, and Orlen felt the pull of the journey tugging at him once more. Together the companions stepped away from the spire, its light guiding them as they moved forward into the unknown, their resolve unshaken but their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the battles yet to come. The companions moved steadily across the barren landscape, the fractured spire's faint glow still visible on the distant horizon behind them, a quiet reminder of the battle they had left behind. Orlen felt a strange pull as they followed the faint, glowing symbols that appeared intermittently on the ground, their shifting patterns leading them deeper into the forgotten lands. The terrain grew rougher with each step, the dry, cracked earth giving way to shallow pools of water that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Cyrana led the way, her grip on the keeper's staff firm as its crystal glowed softly, its light casting eerie reflections across the rippling surface of the water. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and decay, and the hum of the spire faded into a low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to echo from somewhere deep beneath the ground. Adric paused to study the water's edge, his staff resting against his shoulder as he knelt to examine the faint runes that glimmered faintly beneath the surface. "These markings," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet awe. "They're leading us somewhere, but not above, below." The companions exchanged uneasy glances as the water deepened, spreading into a wide, still lake that stretched far beyond the horizon. Its surface was smooth and reflective, like polished glass, broken only by the occasional ripple that disturbed the eerie stillness. Orlen felt a chill run through him as he gazed across the expanse, its dark waters seeming to hold secrets too vast and ancient to comprehend. "There's something down there," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. Cyrana nodded, her expression calm but serious as she studied the faint glow of the runes that pulsed faintly beneath the lake's surface, their patterns forming a path that led into the depths. "The spire guided us here," she said firmly, her tone steady despite the tension in the air. "This lake, it's not just water, it's guarding something." Calen shifted uneasily, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword as his sharp eyes scanned the water's edge. "And whatever it's guarding won't want us taking it," he muttered, his voice low but tense. The hum beneath the ground deepened as they moved closer to the lake's edge, the vibrations resonating through their bones as though urging them forward. Orlen hesitated, his gaze fixed on the shimmering surface, before stepping cautiously into the shallow water. The ripples spread outward in perfect concentric circles, and the faint glow of the runes beneath the surface brightened, their light steady and deliberate as though beckoning them onward. Cyrana followed, her grip on the keeper's staff firm as its light merged with the glow of the runes, casting a faint, golden glow across the lake. Adric moved beside her, his staff humming softly as its runes shimmered in response to the lake's magic. Calen lingered at the edge, his expression wary as he glanced back at the barren plain they had left behind. "We're exposed here," he said sharply, his voice breaking the silence. "If the shadows follow us, we'll have nowhere to stand." The lake grew deeper as they waded forward, the cool water rising steadily to their waists and then their chests, its stillness unnerving in its quiet resistance. Orlen felt the warmth of the relics in his pocket, pulse faintly, their presence a quiet reassurance as the path of glowing runes guided them farther into the depths. The water was darker now, its surface reflecting the dim sky above, but beneath it glimmered faint traces of an ancient structure, a massive submerged ruin whose jagged edges rose like teeth from the murky depths. The runes pulsed brighter as they reached the edge of the structure, their light casting eerie patterns across the broken walls and shattered columns that jutted out of the water. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its crystal glowing fiercely as she turned to the others. "This is it," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "This is what the spire wanted us to find." The hum beneath the ground grew louder, the vibrations rising into a low, melodic resonance that filled the air and the water around them. Orlen felt the pressure in his chest tighten as he reached out to touch the smooth, glimmering surface of the nearest column, its carvings shifting beneath his fingers like liquid light. A sudden wave of warmth surged through him, and the vision came unbidden. A flickering image of the ruin as it once was, its towering structures rising above a vibrant lake, alive with light and energy. He saw figures moving among the ruins, their forms graceful and radiant, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus that echoed across the water. But the vision darkened as the shadows came, consuming the light and leaving only the wreckage of what had once been. Orlen staggered slightly as the vision faded, the water rippling around him as he caught his breath. "It's part of the same network," he said softly, his voice trembling. "The spire, the archway, this place, they're all connected." Cyrana stepped forward, her expression resolute as she raised the keeper's staff, its light merging with the glow of the runes that pulsed across the ruins. "Then we need to uncover its secrets," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The hum deepened, and the water around them began to stir, its surface rippling as though in response to their presence. Calen drew his sword, its blade catching the faint light of the runes as he turned sharply toward the shifting shadows that lingered at the edges of the ruins. "There's something strange here," he said darkly, his voice cutting through the stillness. Orlen's pulse quickened as the glow of the runes brightened, their patterns twisting and shifting like a living thing. The ruin wasn't just a relic of the past, it was alive, and it was waiting for them to uncover what lay beneath its depths. The water grew darker as the companions pressed onward, their movements cautious and deliberate, as the submerged ruins loomed larger beneath them. The faint glow of the runes guided their steps, their light steady and unwavering even as the lake seemed to grow colder and heavier with every passing moment. Cyrana kept the keeper's staff raised, its crystal flaring brightly to illuminate the jagged edges of the columns and walls that rose from the depths, their surfaces carved with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Orlen felt his breath catch as he studied the ruins, their scale and complexity far greater than he had imagined, their broken forms a stark reminder of the civilization that had once thrived here. Adric moved beside him, his staff glowing softly as he muttered a quiet incantation, his voice blending with the low hum that resonated through the water and the stone. "This place wasn't just a city," he said, softly, his voice tinged with awe. "It was a sanctuary, a place of power and protection, and whatever destroyed it didn't leave by accident." The companions came to a halt at the edge of a massive, submerged platform, its surface smooth and unbroken except for the faint, spiraling patterns that glimmered beneath the water. Cyrana stepped forward, her grip on the keeper's staff firm as its light merged with the glow of the runes, casting long, shifting shadows across the platform's surface. "This is where it begins," she said quietly, her voice filled with quiet determination. Orlen felt the warmth of the relics in his pocket pulse faintly, their presence a quiet reassurance as he knelt beside the edge of the platform, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface. The moment his skin made contact, a wave of energy surged through him, and the vision returned, clearer, more vivid than before. He saw the platform as it once was, its surface alive with light and motion, a central hub of activity, surrounded by towering structures that pulsed with energy. Figures moved across it, their forms graceful and radiant, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus that filled the air. But the vision darkened suddenly, the light fading as the shadows came, their dark forms tearing through the ruins with a relentless, consuming force. Orlen staggered slightly as the vision faded, his breath catching as he pulled his hand away. "This wasn't just a sanctuary," he said softly, his voice trembling. "It was a gateway, something that connected this place to the others. And when it fell, everything it was tied to fell with it." Cyrana exchanged a glance with Adric, her expression hard but questioning. "If it's connected to the spire and the archway, then its power might still be intact. If we can find a way to reach it," she said firmly. Adric nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the spiraling patterns that glimmered faintly beneath the water. "The magic here is fractured, but it's not gone," he said thoughtfully. "If we can stabilize it, we might be able to restore what's left." Calen shifted uneasily, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword as his sharp eyes scanned the shadows that lingered at the edges of the light. "And what happens if we're wrong?" he muttered, his voice low but tense. "What happens if whatever broke this place comes back?" The hum beneath the water deepened suddenly, the vibrations resonating through the platform and the companion's bones with an intensity that made the air seem to ripple. The spiraling patterns on the platform flared brightly, their light flooding the lake with a golden glow that sent long shadows racing across the ruins. Orlen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble as the water around them began to stir, its surface rippling and churning as though in response to their presence. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff higher, its crystal flaring brilliantly as she stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "Whatever happens, we stand together," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Adric stepped beside her, his staff glowing brightly as its runes flared in response to the platform's light, the faint hum of his magic blending with the resonance of the ruins. The water erupted suddenly, sending a cascade of spray into the air as a massive, shadowy figure emerged from the depths, its form twisting and writhing like living smoke. Orlen felt his pulse quicken as the figure loomed over them, its dark, featureless shape exuding a suffocating presence that pressed down on his chest. The spiraling patterns on the platform flared again, their light surging in defiance of the shadow's advance, and Cyrana planted the keeper's staff firmly into the ground, its light merging with the platform's glow. "It's protecting the relic," she said sharply, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We have to hold it back." The companions moved as one, their resolve unspoken but clear as they stood their ground against the shadow's relentless advance. Calen stepped forward, his sword flashing in the golden light as he struck at the nearest tendrils of darkness, his movements quick and precise. Adric muttered a quiet incantation, the runes on his staff flaring brightly as he sent a wave of light rippling across the platform, scattering the shadows that crept along its edges. Orlen felt the warmth of the relics in his pocket surge suddenly, their presence filling him with a quiet strength as he stepped closer to the platform's center, his gaze fixed on the spiraling patterns that pulsed with a steady, rhythmic glow. "It's responding to us," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. "It's drawing on our light." The platform's glow intensified, its spiraling patterns resolving into a single, unified design that pulsed brightly with an ancient golden light. The shadow let out a low, resonant roar, its dark form writhing as the light pushed it back, its presence dissolving into the water as the platform's magic surged to life. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her expression calm but resolute as she turned to the others. "The relic is here," she said firmly, "and we're not leaving without it." The water grew still, its surface shimmering faintly in the platform's glow, and Orlen felt a quiet sense of triumph settle over him as the companions prepared to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the lake. The platform's glow illuminated the still waters, its spiraling patterns now fully resolved into a single, intricate design that pulsed with a golden light. The companions stood together, their breaths steadying as the hum beneath the platform softened into a rhythmic vibration that felt more like a heartbeat than a sound. Orlen felt the warmth of the relics in his pocket strengthen, their pulse in perfect harmony with the glow of the platform, and a quiet certainty settled over him. This was the heart of the ruins, the focal point of the power that had once connected the forgotten realms to the spire and the archway. Cyrana stepped forward, her grip firm on the keeper's staff as she held it aloft, its light merging with the platform's glow. The still water surrounding them shimmered faintly, and Adric knelt at the platform's edge, his staff glowing brightly as he traced the carvings with his fingers. "This place has been waiting for us," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet awe. "The power here, it's alive, but it's fractured like the spire. We're not just here to take the relic. We're here to restore it." The air grew heavier as the platform trembled beneath their feet, the golden glow intensifying as though responding to their presence. Orlen felt the ground beneath him shift slightly, and the spiraling patterns on the platform seemed to ripple like liquid light, their movement almost hypnotic. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her expression calm but resolute as she knelt beside the center of the platform. "If we restore it, we might be able to stabilize this entire network," she said thoughtfully, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But if we fail, we could destabilize the entire region, or worse." Calen shifted uneasily, his sword still drawn, as his sharp eyes swept the perimeter of the ruins. "Then we can't afford to fail," he said firmly, his voice low but resolute. Orlen felt a flicker of unease as he noticed faint ripples spreading across the water's surface, their motion too deliberate to be caused by the platform's vibrations. He glanced at Cyrana, her expression unchanging, but the growing tension in the air was unmistakable. "Something's watching us," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. The words felt more like an instinct than an observation, but the weight of them settled heavily over the group. The shadows that had retreated earlier now began to coalesce once more, their movements slow and deliberate as they crept along the edges of the platform's light. Orlen felt his chest tighten as a massive, dark shape emerged from the water, its form twisting and shifting like smoke. The air grew colder, and the hum beneath the platform deepened into a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the water and the ruins. Cyrana stood quickly, the keeper's staff flaring brightly as she turned to face the advancing shadow, her expression calm but firm. "It's not just a guardian," she said sharply. "It's a remnant of whatever destroyed this place." Adric rose to his feet, his staff glowing fiercely as he stepped beside her, his expression thoughtful but wary. "It's drawn to the light," he said quietly. "To the relic, and to us." The shadow surged forward suddenly, its movement swift and chaotic as it lashed out at the edges of the platform. Calen moved to intercept it, his sword flashing in the golden light as he struck at the nearest tendril of darkness, his movements precise and unyielding. The shadow recoiled briefly, its form flickering as though disrupted by the light, but it pressed forward again, its presence relentless. Orlen stepped closer to the platform's center, his heart pounding as he knelt beside the spiraling patterns that pulsed with a steady, rhythmic glow. The warmth of the relics in his pocket surged, their light merging with the platform's glow, and he felt a sudden wave of clarity wash over him. "The platform! It's a conduit?" he said quickly, his voice trembling but sure. "If we can channel the light through it, we might be able to push the shadow back." Cyrana nodded sharply, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening as she planted it firmly into the platform's surface, its light flaring brilliantly as it merged with the spiraling patterns. The golden glow intensified, flooding the ruins with a radiant light that sent long shadows racing across the water. Adric muttered a quiet incantation, his staff humming loudly as the runes along its length flared brightly, their light weaving into the platform's glow. Calen struck again, his sword cutting through the nearest tendrils of shadow as the light surged outward, scattering the darkness with a wave of radiant energy. The shadow let out a low, resonant roar, its form twisting and writhing as it recoiled from the light, but it continued to press forward, its presence unyielding. The platform trembled violently as the spiraling patterns resolved into a single, unified symbol, its light flaring brighter than ever. Orlen felt the pressure in his chest tighten as the relics in his pocket grew warm, their pulse aligning perfectly with the platform's glow. He reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing against the spiraling symbol, and a surge of energy coursed through him, connecting him to the platform and the ruins in a way he couldn't fully understand. The light of the platform flared one final time, its brilliance flooding the lake and the ruins with an intensity that seemed to freeze the air. The shadow let out a final, resonant wail, its form dissolving into the water as the platform's glow steadied, its hum softening into a low, rhythmic vibration. The water grew still once more, its surface reflecting the faint glow of the platform as the companions stood in silence, their breaths heavy but steady. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her expression calm but resolute as she turned to face the others. "The relic is safe," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet determination. "But this isn't over. There's more to uncover, and more to protect." The horizon shimmered faintly, the distant glow of another ruin marking the path ahead, and Orlen felt the pull of the journey tugging at him once more. The sky above the companions stretched wide and pale, its dull light casting a muted glow over the barren expanse as they followed the faintly glowing runes embedded in the ground. The path they tread upon seemed to hum faintly, a soft vibration that grew stronger with every step, as though urging them onward to some unseen destination. Orlen adjusted his pack, his hand brushing against the relics in his pocket, their warmth steady and reassuring amidst the growing chill of the air. The terrain around them had shifted once more, the jagged edges of the ruins giving way to smooth, curving stones, their surfaces carved with intricate patterns that seemed to spiral endlessly inward. Cyrana led the group, her keeper's staff casting a faint golden glow that merged with the light of the runes, her expression resolute but tinged with unease. "This place is too quiet," she murmured, her voice cutting through the stillness. It feels as though the land itself is holding its breath. Adric knelt by a cluster of stone fragments, his staff resting against his shoulder as he traced the carvings with his fingers, his brow furrowed in thought. "These patterns," he said softly, his voice tinged with awe. "They're not just decorative, they're a language meant to convey more than words. It's as if the stones themselves are trying to speak." Calen lingered at the rear, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon where the faint shapes of distant ruins loomed like sentinels against the pale sky. "If they're speaking, they're not saying anything good," he muttered, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "We've seen what silence like this leads to." Orlen felt a flicker of unease at Calen's words, the weight of their truth settling heavily over him. The shadows that had pursued them through the forgotten realms had grown quieter in recent days, their presence no longer a constant threat, but an unshakable weight that lingered just out of sight. The runes beneath their feet flared suddenly, their light brightening to a sharp, vivid gold before fading back to their steady glow. The hum beneath the ground deepened, resonating through the stones and the companion's bones with an intensity that made Orlen stagger slightly. "It's guiding us somewhere," he said quietly, his voice trembling with both awe and apprehension. Cyrana glanced back at him, her expression calm but questioning. "The question is whether it's guiding us to answers," she said thoughtfully, "or to more questions." The path began to slope downward, the ground beneath their feet smooth and solid as it led them into a narrow canyon carved with intricate spirals and patterns that seemed to twist and shift in the dim light. Orlen felt a chill run through him as he gazed at the carvings, their shapes exuding a sense of both beauty and unease, as though they were alive and watching. The air grew cooler as they descended, the faint scent of damp earth mingling with the metallic tang of ancient magic. Adric paused to study a particularly large carving etched into the canyon wall, its spiraling patterns resolving into the shape of a massive eye that seemed to glimmer faintly in the staff's light. "This isn't just a passage," he said, softly, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "It's a threshold. Whatever lies beyond this point, it was meant to be protected." Cyrana nodded slowly, her grip on the keeper's staff tightening as she stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the faintly glowing runes that continued to guide their path. "Then we proceed carefully," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "If this is a threshold, we have to assume it wasn't meant to be crossed easily." The canyon opened suddenly into a vast chamber, its walls rising high into the dim light above, their surfaces covered in spiraling patterns that pulsed faintly in the still air. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone monolith, its surface smooth and unbroken except for the single spiraling symbol that glowed faintly at its center. Orlen felt his breath catch as he stepped closer, the warmth of the relics in his pocket surging as though in recognition of the monolith's light. The hum beneath the ground deepened, the vibration resonating through the chamber with a melodic rhythm that seemed to echo from the monolith itself. "This is it," Cyrana said softly, her voice filled with awe. "The heart of the forgotten realms, the place where everything converges." Adric approached the monolith cautiously, his staff glowing brightly as he studied the spiraling symbol that pulsed with a steady, rhythmic light. "It's a key," he said thoughtfully, his voice tinged with wonder. "A key to something far older than these ruins. But the question is, what does it unlock?" Orlen felt a wave of unease wash over him as the monolith's light flared suddenly, its spiraling symbol shifting and twisting into new patterns that seemed to move with a deliberate, almost sentient purpose. The air grew heavier, the hum deepening into a low, resonant tone that filled the chamber with a quiet, undeniable power. Calen's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword as his sharp eyes darted toward the shadows that lingered at the edges of the light. "We're being watched," he said darkly, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Whatever brought us here isn't done with us yet." Cyrana stepped closer to the monolith, her expression calm but resolute as she raised the keeper's staff, its light merging with the spiraling symbol that pulsed faintly at its center. The monolith's glow brightened, flooding the chamber with a golden light that sent long shadows racing across the walls. Orlen felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on him as he reached out instinctively, his hand brushing against the monolith's smooth surface. A wave of energy surged through him, and the world dissolved into light and shadow, the vision coming unbidden and vivid. He saw the forgotten realms as they had once been, vast and thriving, their magic a living force that connected every ruin, every relic, and every soul within their reach. And he saw the shadow that had come for them, relentless and consuming, its purpose still shrouded in mystery. The vision faded, leaving Orlen breathless and trembling, his thoughts swirling with the weight of what he had seen. "It's not just a key," he said softly, his voice trembling. "It's a question, and we don't know how to answer it." The chamber pulsed with an almost tangible energy as the monolith's light filled the air, casting spiraling patterns across the smooth walls. Orlen stepped back from the towering stone, his hand trembling slightly as the vision's intensity lingered in his thoughts. Cyrana stood at the base of the monolith, the keeper's staff held steady in her grip as its glow merged with the golden light emanating from the stone's spiraling symbol. "It's asking something of us," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the low, melodic hum that resonated from the monolith. "But it isn't speaking in words, it's pulling at the magic of this place, trying to connect." Adric knelt beside the base of the monolith, his staff resting against his shoulder as his fingers brushed over the carvings etched faintly into its surface. "These runes," he said softly, his voice filled with awe. "They're older than anything we've seen. They don't just guide, they record, like a map written into the fabric of the stone. Whatever this monolith is, it's holding something vast, something far beyond this land." The air thickened with an almost electric tension, and the spiraling patterns on the monolith shifted again, their light flickering like firelight caught in a breeze. Orlen's chest tightened as he watched the runes ripple, their movement deliberate and unsettling, as though they were alive and watching. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff higher, its light flaring brightly as she stepped closer to the monolith, her expression calm but resolute. "It's waiting for us to respond," she said thoughtfully, her tone steady despite the unease that filled the air. Calen stood near the edge of the light, his sharp eyes fixed on the shadows that gathered at the chamber's perimeter, their forms twisting and shifting like smoke. "Whatever it's waiting for, we don't have much time," he muttered, his voice low but firm. "The shadows aren't just watching anymore, they're moving." The companions turned sharply as the hum deepened, resonating through the chamber with a rhythmic pulse that seemed to match the movement of the spiraling runes. The shadows at the edge of the light grew denser, their forms coalescing into dark, flickering shapes that crept closer with every passing moment. Adric stood slowly, his staff glowing brightly as the runes along its length flared in response to the monolith's light. If the monolith is a key, then there must be a way to unlock it, he said thoughtfully, his tone filled with quiet determination. But the shadows, they're drawn to it too. Whatever it guards, they want it as much as we do. Orlen felt a flicker of unease as the shadows surged forward suddenly, their movements swift and chaotic as they struck against the edges of the light. Calen stepped forward to meet them, his sword flashing in the golden glow as he parried and struck, his movements precise and unyielding. The shadows recoiled briefly, their forms flickering and writhing like smoke, but they pressed forward again, their presence relentless. Cyrana turned sharply, planting the keeper's staff firmly into the ground as its light flared brilliantly, sending a wave of golden energy rippling through the chamber. "We hold them here," she said sharply, her voice commanding. "If the monolith falls, everything it's protecting will fall with it." The spiraling patterns on the monolith flared again, their light surging outward in a wave that seemed to ripple through the chamber and into the air beyond. Orlen felt the warmth of the relics in his pocket grow stronger, their pulse aligning perfectly with the monolith's glow, and a sudden wave of clarity washed over him. "It's not just asking," he said, quickly, his voice trembling with urgency. "It's reaching for something we're holding. The relics, they're a part of it." Adric's eyes widened as he stepped toward the monolith, his staff humming loudly as its runes shimmered in time with the spiraling patterns. "If that's true, then we're not just unlocking the monolith," he said softly, his tone tinged with awe. "We're becoming part of it. The question isn't just what it guards, it's whether we're willing to share in its burden." The air grew colder as the shadows pressed forward again, their dark forms coiling and twisting as they struck against the companions' defenses. Calen moved swiftly to intercept them, his sword flashing in the golden light as he cut through the nearest tendrils of darkness, his movements quick and precise. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff higher, its light merging with the monolith's glow as she turned to face Orlen, her expression calm but questioning. "The relics are yours to carry," she said firmly. "If they're the key to the monolith, then it's your choice to unlock it." Orlen hesitated, his chest tightening as he felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on him. The monolith's spiraling symbol pulsed brightly, its light flooding the chamber as though urging him forward, and he stepped closer, his hand trembling as he reached into his pocket to draw out the relics. The instant his fingers closed around them, the warmth surged through him like a tidal wave, and the world dissolved into light and shadow. He saw the forgotten realms as they had once been, a vast, thriving network of magic and life that stretched far beyond the ruins they had encountered. He saw the monolith as it once was, a beacon of connection and purpose, its light holding the shadows at bay. But he also saw the cost, the sacrifices made to preserve the light, and the questions left unanswered as the shadowed forces encroached. The vision faded, and Orlen staggered slightly, his breath catching as he placed the relics against the spiraling symbol. The monolith's light flared brilliantly, flooding the chamber with a golden glow that sent the shadows recoiling, their dark forms dissolving into the air as the hum softened into a steady, rhythmic vibration. The chamber grew still, the air filled with a quiet, resonant power that seemed to ripple through the ruins beyond. Orlen stepped back from the monolith, his thoughts swirling with the weight of the vision, and Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her expression calm but questioning. "What did you see?" she asked softly. Orlen hesitated, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Not answers," he said finally, his tone filled with quiet resolve. "Just more questions, questions we can't yet understand." The monolith's light steadied, its spiraling patterns resolving into a fixed, glowing design that pulsed gently in the dim chamber. The hum in the air softened to a resonant vibration, as if the ancient structure was catching its breath after millennia of silence. Orlen stepped away from the towering stone, the relics in his hand still warm, their connection to the monolith leaving an ache in his chest that felt more like longing than pain. Cyrana approached cautiously, her keeper's staff dimming as she knelt beside the base of the monolith, her fingers brushing over the now still carvings. "It's quiet," she said softly, her voice filled with cautious wonder. "But not silent. Whatever we've done, the monolith is holding steady, for now." Adric knelt beside her, his staff resting on the smooth ground as his sharp eyes studied the glowing patterns. "We didn't just awaken it," he murmured, his tone thoughtful. "We've aligned it. It's connected to the other ruins, to the spire, and perhaps beyond. But it's not complete. There's more it's asking of us, even doesn't speak." The chamber's walls seemed to breathe with the faint, golden glow cast by the monolith, the spiraling designs etched into the stone, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the hum. Calen lingered at the edge of the light, his sword sheathed but his hand resting on the hilt, his sharp gaze fixed on the shadows that had retreated to the far edges of the chamber. "They're not gone," he said quietly, his voice tinged with unease. "The shadows, they're holding back, but they're watching, waiting." Orlen felt a chill run through him as he turned to face the distant forms lingering in the dimness, their shapes flickering like smoke caught in a breeze. "They didn't follow us here by chance," he said softly, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. "They're drawn to the monolith, to the relics. They know what's at stake." Cyrana stood slowly, her grip firm on the keeper's staff as she turned to the others, her expression calm but resolute. "If the shadows are waiting, then so are we," she said firmly. "We've stabilized the monolith, but we can't stay here. Whatever this place holds, it's only part of the answer. We have to move forward." Adric nodded, his staff humming faintly as he rose to his feet, his gaze lingering on the spiraling patterns that glowed faintly across the monolith's surface. "The ruins are connected," he said thoughtfully. "If this monolith is a key, then the next step must lie beyond these walls. The network is guiding us. It's pulling us to something greater." The monolith's light flared suddenly, its glow brightening to an intensity that filled the chamber with golden radiance. Orlen shielded his eyes as the air grew warm, the hum rising into a melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the stone and water surrounding them. When the light faded, the spiraling patterns on the monolith had shifted, their designs pointing toward a narrow archway that had appeared in the far wall of the chamber. The air beyond the archway shimmered faintly, its surface rippling like the surface of a pool disturbed by an unseen current. "It's not just a door," Cyrana said softly, her voice tinged with awe. "It's a passage, something beyond the forgotten realms." Orlen stepped toward the archway, his heart pounding as the warmth of the relics in his pockets surged, their light flickering faintly in harmony with the glow of the monolith. The shadows that had lingered at the chamber's edges began to stir, their forms shifting and coalescing as they moved closer to the light. Calen drew his sword, its blade catching the faint glow of the monolith as he turned sharply to face the advancing darkness. "They won't let us leave without a fight," he said darkly, his voice steady despite the tension in his stance. Cyrana raised the keeper's staff, its light flaring brightly as she stepped forward, her expression calm but unyielding. "Then we give them one," she said, firmly. The shadows surged forward, their movements swift and chaotic as they struck against the companions' defenses. Calen moved with precision, his sword flashing in the golden light as he cut through the nearest tendrils of darkness, their forms dissolving into the air with a faint echoing wail. Adric stood beside Cyrana, his staff glowing brightly as he muttered a quiet incantation, the runes along its length flaring brilliantly as a wave of light rippled across the chamber, scattering the shadows that crept along the ground. Orlen felt the weight of the relics in his pocket grow heavier, their warmth spreading through him like a quiet reassurance as he turned toward the archway, its shimmering surface calling to him like a whisper in the back of his mind. The battle was brief but fierce, the shadows pressing with relentless determination before finally retreating into the dimness, their forms flickering and dissolving as the companions' light held firm. The chamber grew still once more, the hum of the monolith softening into a steady, rhythmic vibration that resonated through the walls. Cyrana lowered the keeper's staff, her breath steadying as she turned toward the archway, its shimmering surface glowing faintly in the golden light. "This is the way forward," she said, softly, her voice filled with quiet determination. "But it's not just a passage, it's a choice. Whatever lies beyond, we leave the forgotten realms behind." Orlen felt the weight of her words settle heavily over him as he stepped toward the archway, his gaze lingering on the shimmering surface that seemed to ripple like liquid light. The warmth of the relics pulsed faintly in his pocket, their presence a quiet reassurance as he turned to face the others. "We've come this far," he said, softly, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his chest. "Whatever lies ahead, it's part of the answer, and we're not turning back." Together the companions stepped toward the archway, their steps deliberate and unhurried, as the light of the monolith faded behind them, its steady hum a quiet reminder of the journey they had begun. The air grew warmer as they passed through the shimmering surface, the world beyond the forgotten realms opening before them with a brilliance that felt both familiar and unknown.